Yeah, that is kind of interesting because you're right. Because another like form it could take is somebody actually like wearing a shirt that said something like, "Oh, I hate Islam" or something like that, which is sort of them taking on that personally, right?
Yeah.
So say, "Oh, this is me," versus I write it down there, and it could have been anybody
they
who
don't really
wrote
want
it,
to
right? So it's like
acknowledge it,
it's
yeah.
not me; it's just out there, right?
Yeah.
Matt's suggestion was sort of like being able to talk about it. I think is a huge part of that, right? So
yeah, and almost insistent that we talk about it, like,
Yeah.
and not letting it just kind of go away and like, oh, it was a news story, and but like within, yeah, I said faith groups and communities, but like I think family should be talking about this sort of thing.
Yeah, because if you don't talk about it, I suppose it becomes more of a norm, something
That's
that
normal,
just,
yeah.
everyone kind of accepts as.
Yeah, you just kind of roll your eyes and move on.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
I think this is bad.
or worse, it's support through silence, right?
Oh yeah,
Like,
that's true.
I mean, if kids are growing up and they're like, "Oh, my parents, they never once said, oh, it was bad that this happened,"
Right.
then it's kind of like, well, did they really think it was good?
Yeah,
I
were
mean,
they
and
actually
you don't know, right?
They
Like,
actually
yeah,
secretly supportive,
Right,
and just
yeah,
didn't
like,
want to tell you. I don't know, the more I think about, like you asked the question about like the university president sending out an email condemning it.
Well, he didn't condemn it. He just said he didn't condone it.
Why just an email?
Well, that's my question
Yeah.
too, right? So, here's my like. I actually think that the whole email from the president thing was like a bad idea. But anyway, if he'd have asked me, I would have said something different. But one problem I have is that the email is so generic and it doesn't reference any particular action, right? So it just sounds like it's coming out like, oh yeah, like Islamophobia is bad. Like, okay, interesting, but why am I getting an email on like a random Thursday in the middle? You know what I mean? And so it sort of needed some context, I think, to then, because it doesn't even reference anything at the U of C, it doesn't reference any incidents at MRU or any ones around Calgary. It just kind of is like blanket statement, right? So, and yeah, it sort of does beg the question, like, well, why an email? And then, like, yeah, and then it kind of doesn't have a whole lot of context. So in some ways, like I read it and I was like, oh, that's interesting, but almost more confusing because it asks questions. But at least it hits the low bar of at least saying something about it versus like not actually saying anything about it. But then it begs the question, what's the level of response, right?
Well, I mean, in my opinion, him being the president of the university, that bar shouldn't even be there. Like his low bar is a lot higher than what he did. Do you know what I mean? Like that low bar is for me or for my mom. But as a president of a university, that bar shouldn't be that low. You know what I mean? It's like what he should have, what the president of the university, where they have a multi-faith chaplaincy where there's various religions, should be something that, and that shows that he cares, because that also kind of just feels like he doesn't really care that much. He just has to do it out of public relations reasons, right?
Yeah,
So.
it does have kind of that perception of that. I think there probably were some people who read it that way, sort of like, oh, I guess he's supposed to say this, and so that's why I'm getting this, rather than, oh, I actually think this, or like the U.S. right now with the Black Lives Matter movement is like a huge movement because it's sort of challenging the system to say what is justice if if you're black and you get killed by the police and there isn't even really legal consequences and you got killed. Like, it's one thing if you felt bad at the end of the day. It's like another thing if you like actually lost your life, and then it's like, well, what can we do? Like, and you're like, well, it seems like there would be. And so that's where you get this crisis of people saying, like, is it even a justice system anymore, or is it just like this, like, what is it? And so that's...
No, it's true. No, because I even read this story of like this doctor who was on a flight and somebody ended up passing out on the flight, and like she's black, a black doctor, and she's a doctor, and no one would believe her until she constantly gave them information to how to deal with this patient, but they would not let the doctor basically see the patient or deal with it. And I was just seriously, she knows her job. Just because the color of her skin, you're questioning her ability of doing her job. But if it was somebody else, they even said on there, oh, we have a white doctor here, it's okay. So I was just okay, well, that means if it was somebody, any other race is not okay for this profession. And so that means this specific profession has a specific identity that it's kind of associated with. Yeah.
Was it just one person who wouldn't allow her to perform?
No,
or was
it was
nobody kind of stood up?
No one stood up for it.
So it was just one
they couldn't
person.
believe it. She even pressed the button.
I didn't read the whole story, but it
I
was
read it all,
definitely basically they're like, oh, do we have a doctor on the plane?
And they
she was
said
yeah,
click on the button
yeah,
if you were a doctor, and they're do you have something to show us?
Maybe her exact words were sorry, sweetie, please sit down. Stop
Exactly.
acting
Please
like
have
that."
us grab a seat. We'll take care of it. We have a doctor here. Yeah, and so for I don't know, for that high level, especially on a plane, for somebody to be questioned for their ability, but for somebody else who is not questioned for their ability, for their color of skin or whatever race they come from, I think that's they're educated. They went through school to become who they are right now, whatever, flight attendant, a pilot, you know what I mean? And so why couldn't they question this? This, I don't know, I feel like it's a moral, the system in a sense, do you really believe what's on the media? Do you really believe what people are actually reinforcing? Or, I don't know, just
It all goes back to stereotypes.
yeah, the stereotypes that are set. Do you question them or do you conform to them in that sense?
But it's not like they want to be a cabbie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's just that stereotype is there, but that creates the barrier so that they can't actually practice becoming a doctor, being a doctor here.
Mm-hmm.
So I think stereotypes a lot of times we conform to them, but I think a lot of it also has to do with the stereotype becomes a barrier itself for us to do something or to move forward.
Yeah, I think the university I worked at in Michigan had in October they would have a week called Unlearn Week, and the whole idea, which is weird for a university to have Unlearn Week, but basically the whole idea was to say we learn all these stereotypes and our prejudices really easily and really young, right? So and so we just think, learning is always good. But it's but what if you're learning bad things, right? Then it's actually then education is actually a negative in that sense, right? And so what they talked about was this idea of what we need to do is actually unlearn the things that our biases and stereotypes and assumptions, and then we have to replace that with other things.
How do you go about unlearning something though? Yeah.
So do that week though. That would be really cool to do at MRU.
Unlearn Week. Well, part of it is and this is I don't know, I'm not a scientist, I'm just using all the brain science that's out there, right? But I think it's that we have stereotypes are mental shortcuts, right? It's so that we don't have to think as hard, right? And so I think the way you unlearn it is not necessarily trying to use a bad computer metaphor, trying to delete those files.
Yeah.
It's instead